The cognitive mistake many of us make is thinking that we need to talk about our issues. One of the things I'm known for saying that's quite controversial is stop talking about your relationship problems unless, of course, you want to break up, and start connecting first.
Welcome back to Dating Rehab with Anna Morgenstern. And today we have Bruce Muzik, which is probably the best name I've ever had to say on here. He is a world-renowned relationship repair specialist and founder of Love at First Fight. He has over 25 years of experience. He's helped tens of thousands of couples transform conflict into thriving partnerships. He's trusted by war veterans, sports stars, Hollywood producers, and Harvard therapists. So very honored to have you on today, Bruce. Thank you so much.
Hey, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm equally honored to be here. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the kinds of people that you work with.
Okay, well, my passion is helping couples stay together. I was always one of those people who struggled in relationships, and I know the heartbreak of breaking up and how that goes, and that kind of inspired me to start working with couples many moons ago. And so what I do is I specialize in helping couples in long-term committed relationships who are struggling or who are fighting or who are in conflict, how to get back on the same page again, be great partners to each other, repair their relationship, turn things around, and ideally, hopefully, live a lifetime together of joy and growth. So that's what I'm up for in the world.
It's unrealistic to think that there will be any couple out there that won't have any sort of conflict or will need any sort of conflict resolution in their relationships, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the pieces of research I read said that the number one predictor of divorce was the absence of conflict. So conflict's actually a thing that predicts you staying together if you do it well. I mean, not always. You can use conflict to destroy your relationship too, but the absence of conflict is as dangerous as the two of you fighting all the time and not getting things resolved.
That's such a good point. I would think if you're not really speaking to one another, you're not going to have conflict. You're just letting things fester, or you're just checked out where you don't even care if, there's things that are bothering you because you're just already mentally not there. I would love to hear a
Yeah.
little bit more about your personal story. Are you married? What's your kind of dating history?
Yeah, married and divorced and then remarried. And it was actually my divorce that led me to get interested in relationships. I had this, I guess, humbling epiphany that the common denominator in all of my failed relationships was me. And that kind of inspired me to start reading about relationships and learning about relationships. This is like 17 years ago. And I just freshly come out of a divorce, and I started devouring everything I could find at the time about attachment theory, about developmental psychology. And the more I read, the more amazed I was at what I was discovering. And I kept thinking, why weren't we taught this at school? If only we'd all been taught this at school, we wouldn't end up in struggling relationships in the first place. You need to take driving lessons in order to learn how to do something as complex as driving a car. Having a relationship is probably 5 times more complex, but you can just do it for free. And you can have children without having to pass any kind of exam. So I got passionate about this. And after about 3 years of boring all of my friends to tears at dinner parties, talking about relationships, the common theme that they would say back to me is, Bruce, you're clearly into this. Maybe you should consider doing this professionally. And so I ended up qualified to work with couples, and eventually Love at First Fight was born. And so I'm really proud that we've had over 40,000 people go through our programs and turn their relationships around. And
That's
so,
amazing.
yeah, that's kind of how I got into it myself, was through a divorce and realizing that I had the work started over here with me, not blaming my partner, waiting for them to change, but me changing first.
Absolutely. You and I have somewhat similar origin stories. I was
Yeah.
going through a breakup when I was 31, and I was just devastated. I could not believe that he broke up with me. We're about to move in together. I thought he was the one. And I never thought back, well, we actually fought a lot and we were not that happy together and we're quite mean to each other. So, of course, he didn't want to continue the relationship. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I had to take accountability for my actions and be someone he would want to be with. You're not just stuck with someone. We weren't married. Even then, you're not stuck with someone if they're not treating you well. I didn't really think
Yeah.
about how my actions would cause him to fall out of love with me, really. And so I was just reading every dating book and trying to figure out how can I get him back and all the things and, really reading through other people's stories and connecting with other, dating coaches. It really helped me in my own life to move on in a healthy way and get to a place where I had run into him maybe 3 or 4 years after that. And it was such a friendly experience. It was just really nice to see him. And he had moved on, and I had moved on. And I just know if I didn't do that self work, I would have been a miserable person if I had run into him. And I really wanted to
Agreed.
give that wisdom back to people. And I also had a friend, because I was helping all of my friends around me get married. I literally looked around, all my friends were married by people I set them up with or helped them with. And I also had a friend that encouraged me to do this professionally. And I do think like when you've had a good experience learning this like wisdom, you just want to share it with others. So that's really beautiful that you've helped so many people.
Yeah, thank you. I totally relate to your story.
Yeah. Do you believe in monogamous relationships only, or do you think other types of situations can work?
Well, I think anything can work with the right people. I'm definitely a big believer in monogamy, having tried open relationships myself and failed miserably at it. I think that us human beings are actually wired to pair bond with one other. We're not wired to pair bond with multiple people. And part of why I'm such a believer in monogamy is, it's hard enough having a relationship and staying connected with one person. I mean, that's a lifetime's worth of work. Try to do that with two people where you kind of, when you add an extra person into the mix, now you've kind of quadrupled the complexity of what you're dealing with because you've got one person's wounds, past history, culture, another person's wounds, past history and culture, your wounds, past history and culture. Put that into a melting pot. Oh my God, that's a recipe for unhappiness, despair, loneliness, fights. I mean, I'm sure you're going to have some peak moments and some amazing experiences, but there are very few people who are A, secure enough, B, mature enough, and C, have the understanding to be able to handle three people's differing needs. I mean, I can barely keep up with meeting my relationships needs, let alone two people. I don't know how it's possible over the long term. I mean, I can see it in the short term, sure, but in the long term, committed relationship with more than one person, I don't know, not for me.
Yeah, it seems like people will add a new element, like an open relationship, to put a band-aid on a situation or on a relationship that's maybe hasn't been doing well, or maybe the intimacy has lacked in the relationship. What are some of the most common issues people come to you with?
Mostly it's conflict. People come to me because they feel lonely and they're trying to get their partner to listen to them and to hear that they're lonely so they can repair things and their partner won't. And so they end up fighting. People come to me because they're not on the same page about something, or they feel like roommates rather than passionate lovers, or they've been fighting for so long they're on the brink of divorce and they love the person they're with. They don't really want to get divorced, but they don't see another way out. Or they've tried therapy with 5 different therapists and it's failed every time. And now they're like, well, this is our last ditch attempt to make things work. It's a bunch of different reasons, but generally they're struggling. And I think the common thread underneath all of this that most of the people I work with don't see in the beginning is that they've gotten disconnected. And out of that time of being disconnected, resentment has built up. And so now they can no longer even communicate kindly with each other because both of their nervous systems are on red alert looking for danger. And they rather, end up lashing out and fighting or compulsively withdrawing and disconnecting instead of kind of living with the uncomfortable feeling of opening up and being vulnerable and honest about what's really going on inside. So they don't really talk about the real issues. They just fight about the surface issues until one of them goes, I'm out of here, or I'm going to get some help. And that's when they find me usually.
Right? Do you feel like with most couples, is it really a case by case situation, or are there some kind of broader things that you can say that kind of apply to everybody in your advice or in your conflict resolution?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's many big picture principles. One of the my favorite ones that I help couples understand is that your relationship's naturally going to go through 3 developmental stages. So just like you grow up from being like a toddler to being a teenager to being an adult to hopefully being a wise old man or wise old woman one day, you can't skip stages. Your relationship also grows up in the same way where you can't skip stages. And the first stage, which is the one we all know, is the romance stage. And in this stage, you're not really in love, although it feels like you are. You're in infatuation, which is the most immature form of love because you haven't really earned the rights to experience love yet. You're just high on drugs. Your brain is pumping out oxytocin, vasopressin, serotonin, dopamine, and you look at your partner and you're like, oh, I feel good. And you think it's them and you think you're in love, but no, you're in infatuation. And so somewhere between 2 months and 2 years into the relationship, when one of you perceives permanence, like maybe you move in together, maybe you get engaged, maybe you get pregnant, but you perceive permanence, your nervous system kind of shifts gear and you begin thinking to yourself, okay, hold on a second. If I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life, then some things are going to have to change here. And it's not me, it's you that has to change. And so the second stage of relationship begins, which I call the power struggle stage. And in the power struggle stage, what you're doing is fighting for your autonomy. If in the romance stage you became bonded together, its job is to kind of help you connect and bond. Then the power struggle stage, you're trying to separate. Why would you need to separate? So that you don't lose yourself being enmeshed with the person you've just bonded with. So nature's way of making sure that you can maintain your sense of autonomy and maintain your relationship is to help you separate. And so you're fighting to get your needs met, to make sure that you can be in this relationship and feel like you've got your needs met. You can still be you can still have your friends, you can still have your communal friends and your private friends, you can have your joint life and your private life. You don't have to sacrifice who you are to be in relationship with this person. And that's where the conflict begins. But I think the cognitive mistake many of us make because of our culture, because of Hollywood, because of reality TV and dating advice shows is thinking that if you're fighting, that means that you're incompatible and you should go find another partner, or that means there's something wrong with your relationship. In the power struggle stage, fighting is totally normal. I mean, if you don't fight, how are you ever going to end up resolving your differences? If you don't fight, you never talk about what goes on, and you're almost guaranteeing that eventually things are going to blow up and one of you is going to leave and blow out of the relationship. So the power struggle stage is normal. And this is one of the first things I try and help couples understand is that what you're going through doesn't mean that your relationship's doomed, that there's anything wrong with it. It just means you've entered your next stage, your relationship's teenage years. And now you've got some learning to do. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to go to therapy. And, for most people, I would say for 75% of the people that I work with, all they need is education. Nobody's ever taught them how to navigate this world of power struggle, of conflict, of meeting each other's needs. We're taught that, if you're trying to meet your partner's needs, it's probably codependent and, you should stop doing that. But yet we're all dependent on each other, and there's healthy dependence and unhealthy dependence. There's a way to meet each other's needs where you're not kind of like becoming codependent on your partner. And if you're lucky enough to graduate out of the power struggle stage, which most people aren't, they usually stay stuck there or it ends up tearing them apart, you graduate into what I call the mature love stage, which is a stage where the conflict ends, you're getting your needs met, you've seen each other at each other's worst, you've fought, you've been through struggle together, and you've been through the eye of the needle together, you've popped out the other side, and you've realized, you know what? I love you, warts and all. I know all of your dark spots. I know all of your trauma, all of your history, all of your things that are unresolved, and I love you anyway. And I accept you just the way you are. I don't want to change you. You can just be you here in this relationship with me. I'll be me here in this relationship with you. And together, we're going to create a team and a partnership and go into the world. And you need to earn the rights to get into the mature love stage. It usually doesn't emerge until at least 3, 4, 5 years into the relationship, because you need the time to go through the struggle together and to kind of trust each other, to develop trust, to develop tools with each other that you can use to resolve things and repair and get back out on the same page again when conflict inevitably comes back in the future, which it will. But the difference is that couples in the mature love stage, when conflict comes up, they sit down, they hold hands, they talk about it, they resolve it. Half an hour later, they're back connected and off they go. It doesn't derail them like it did in the power struggle stage. So what I'm passionate about is helping couples move from the power struggle into the mature love stage. And I know mature love isn't a very sexy name. Like the romance stage sounds far more, fun because you're falling in love and it's passionate and your heart's beating at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But that heart beating at 1,000,000 miles an hour very often is fear, not necessarily love. It's the fear that I might lose this person, the fear that if I don't impress this person, they might judge me as deficient. The fear that if I am not pleasing them, they might abandon me. And so very often that heart beating at a million miles an hour is not a good sign that you've met the right person for you. It's often a sign that you've met someone who has a reciprocal wound and your nervous system's terrified because it knows what's about to come next. Abandonment, judgment, withdrawal, whatever it is that comes in the power struggle stage. For me, I like to think of when you meet someone who's compatible for you, your heart beats steadily. You're not like a million miles an hour. Oh my God, I'm desperately falling in love. You're like recognizing, I feel safe. I feel calm. But if you're insecurely attached, meaning if you struggle in relationships, that calmness will be interpreted as boredom. And you'll go, nah, that person doesn't make me excited. And you'll push away the exact person that could be so good for you and instead pull in the person who might drive you crazy and re-trigger all of your unhealed childhood wounds. Anyway, that's
Mhm.
more than you asked in the question. Don't get me started.
No, that makes so much sense. I'm, I think, 9 months into my marriage now, and we've been
Congratulations.
together for just over 2 years, like 2.5 years almost. So I definitely feel like we're starting to get into that power struggle phase where we're trying to figure out, okay, like,
Yeah.
figure out like the rules for the relationship and for our marriage long term.
Yeah.
And, I always ask every therapist that I talk to that's been on the show, like, what are the best ways to disarm someone when you want to bring up a conversation when you're in this power struggle stage? Because the other person might get defensive and they might hear something that you're not saying, or they, assume that you're implying something that you once said. Things can spiral very quickly. Is there like a quick tip of how you can bring up things while you're in that power struggle stage that will feel safe, in the
Yeah,
relationship?
absolutely. Well, I think what we've got to do is go one step
Asking for
before.
myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to to offer that for you and for your listeners. So I think the cognitive mistake many of us make is thinking that we need to talk about our issues. One of the things I'm known for saying that's quite controversial is stop talking about your relationship problems unless, of course, you want to break up and start connecting first. Now, it's not
Mm,
that I'm saying never talk about your relationship problems. What I'm saying is that what most of us do is we're completely disconnected. We feel discombobulated. We're in fight or flight. We're disconnected from each other and feeling unsafe. And then we want to talk about our problems and think that it's going to go well. When your nervous system is triggered, you're trained to do one of two things. You're going to fight or you're going to run for the hills and get the heck out of here. And that's what our nervous system does. And we don't have any control over that. That just happens unconsciously and automatically. And so one of the first things I teach my couples, in fact, it is the first thing I teach my couples, is this idea that instead of talking about your problems, first connect. So
mm,
I have this phrase that I call connect first, communicate later. And the idea here is that when you connect before you start talking, like if you take 10 minutes and just sit down with each other, hold hands, give each other a long hug, like make sure you're feeling good before you go into the conversation, make sure you're feeling safe before you go into the conversation. Your nervous systems stop perceiving your partner as the enemy or as a threat and instead goes, oh, okay, I'm safe with this person. It calms down. And then you naturally begin communicating kindly or in a way that doesn't trigger your partner and get them upset or defensive. And so I played this experiment on my couples maybe 10, 15 years ago, where I thought, I wonder what would happen if I got all my couples connected first. And for the first 2 weeks, I said to them, we're not going to talk about a single issue. We're just going to focus on getting you connected first. And so that's what I did. And I noticed that when they started talking about their problems 2 weeks later, the conversations just went smoothly. They were a non-event. It was like, oh, that's what you meant. Oh, I totally misunderstood. I'm sorry, honey. Like, come here, give me a hug. Let's figure this out and move on. And so things had a lot less drama when we spoke about them, and the couples were connected first. So what I do in all of my courses and with my clients that I work with is I give them exercises for the first couple of weeks so that their nervous systems start to perceive their partner as safe again. When that happens, the communication tools that I then teach them can be used. But if you're not connected first and you begin using communication tools, they just end up becoming weaponized. Like, for
mm,
example, one of the most common communication tools that almost everybody knows is the I feel communication tool. And like used correctly, it's meant to sound something like, honey, when you don't take out the trash, I feel unsupported and lonely. But when you're disconnected, it comes out like, when you don't take out the trash, I feel like you're a jerk. And now suddenly you've just weaponized your communication tool and you've become empowered to hurt each other rather than to heal each other. So step one, before you even start talking, is get connected first, start feeling safe first, make both of your nervous systems relax. And depending on where you are in your relationship, that could take, from a matter of minutes. Like my wife could just come up to me and give me a hug and say, babe, I need to chat with you about something. I want you to know you're not in trouble. This is going to go well. I love you. And she'll come and give me a big kiss and a hug. And then we sit down. I'm like, okay, I already feel relaxed. This is great. We're connected. It's going to go well. She's got good intentions. I don't need to be, on the back foot. I don't need to have my guard up. I can relax and I can open up. And then step two is to communicate vulnerably. And so in order to be vulnerable, we need to be able to feel like it's safe enough for us to open our heart and reveal what's really going on deep inside. I think the big mistake many of us make when we start talking about our problems is we start talking about what's going on the surface out there. You did this, you did that, you never do this, you always do that. And we kind of over-focus on our partner and go, you, instead of pointing the finger back at ourselves and talking about what's going on deep inside. Like, honey, when X, Y, and Z happened, I started to feel really anxious and afraid. And here's what I was scared of. I was scared that maybe if this thing happened, it meant that you don't love me and that eventually one day you're just going to abandon me when this thing stops working for you. Can you give me a hug and just reassure me that everything's cool between us? Like, that's vulnerable. And that doesn't inspire your partner to want to fight back, counterattack, or defend, because nowhere in that conversation did you point a finger at them. You
Mm-hmm.
pointed the finger back here. So you're connected first, then you're talking about what's going on inside of you, not talking around the issue or talking about what they did or what they didn't do or how they made you feel or blah, blah, blah. You're talking about what's really going on inside. And then you can actually get things resolved. And it really helps to have a structure to work with. And so I love teaching frameworks because frameworks are easy to remember and you can just kind of call on a framework or pull out a piece of paper off the fridge and read it and you've got a framework and it helps to work through those things.
Yeah, I had a friend once tell me that if I ever wanted to ask my husband for something, sleep with him first and then ask.
Great.
And it
Some
kind
of
of
us would
sounds
call
like
it
he was on to
manipulation.
something. Well, kind of sounds like that's what he want to connect. And
Yes.
he was saying basically, you'll get what you want if their connection feels good. As I think what he was trying to say, but he said it in a funny way. But that always kind of stuck with me. But maybe
Yes.
he wasn't wrong.
No, I don't think he is wrong because so many men, particularly avoidantly attached men, bond through sex. And so that's an easy way to get connected first. And then when you do ask, the heart's open and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I feel bonded with you. I feel connected to you. Of course, I want to give you the world. You're my woman. Of course, I want you to have the thing that you want. But when we're feeling criticized or not accepted or judged or whatever the case may be, we've got our arms folded and our heart isn't open. And so even if we consciously want to serve our woman, there's something about us that doesn't feel like that's what we're compelled to do in the moment because we've been so hurt, we're shut down. And I think one thing that so many women misunderstand is that their partner's shutdown is personal. When a man shuts down, it's usually because he's hurt. He won't say
Mm.
that he's hurt because very often us men have been brought up in families where it's not safe to talk about your feelings. We don't want to admit that. We're afraid that vulnerability might be perceived as weakness. And so we kind of keep our cards, close to our chest and we're a little bit guarded. But deep down inside, almost always a man's withdrawal comes from fear and the fear of being hurt.
Yeah. Question for you. If people are married for a year or less and get divorced, I always wonder, like, why get married in the first place if you're just going to, I do feel like sometimes people date for a long time and they feel like, well, it's the right thing to do to get married. And then they're in marriage and realize the relationship hasn't gotten better. But I always thought that was so crazy to go through with a wedding and, to make it legal just to get divorced. I mean, I've spoken to people that got divorced less than 6 months after their wedding. Do you think it's because they were still in that stage of the power struggle, or are they just weren't really right for each other?
It could be both. So, most commonly, what I see, you get married. Remember, the power struggle begins when you perceive permanence. Nothing's more permanent than marriage, right? So, suddenly, the day after the wedding, you wake up and your power struggle begins. And suddenly you're like, crap, things got worse. I got married hoping things would get better. I'm hoping because he or she wanted to get married that me, getting married would then have them calm down. Now things have got even worse. We must be incompatible. Goodbye. I'm out of here. And they quit and run, not understanding that the day you get married is the day your power struggle begins. Now, the power struggle, ideally you get married after your power struggle has ended. Like you go through your power struggle when, you perceive permanence some other way. And then once you've worked things out, you get married because you know who the person is inside and out now. You know who you're marrying. None of us actually end up doing that. We usually get married in the romance stage when we're high on love drugs and we're like, this is the person for me. We can't even imagine them turning into the person they're about to turn into a year down the line, or ourselves turning into the person we're about to turn into a year down the line. And then suddenly we end up in conflict. Now, of course, there are always going to be cases where there's just, you shouldn't have married the person. For example, in my first marriage, I was divorced within probably 2 years of being married. And if I look back, I'm so glad we got divorced because as amazing of a human being as she is, and we're still friendly and in touch with each other, I married her for all the wrong reasons. I'm not going to go into all the wrong reasons now because it's not a show about my love life. And actually I should probably have never gotten married in the first place, but I was just too immature and too young to really understand and have that realization. And it took us going through the relationship together for both of us to go, you know what? I love you. You're like my best friend, but we are on completely different paths in life. We want totally opposite things. Every time we try to come together as a team, we're incompatible. Like you want to live by the ocean, I want to live by the mountains, or you want to live in the city, I want to live in the countryside. Incompatible. You get the
Mhm.
idea. So that exists too. But more often than not, it's couples at the power struggle stage and they think that the conflict is a sign that they're incompatible and there's something wrong when it isn't necessarily.
I know I look at my parents and they are so happy now, but growing up, there was
Yeah.
definitely that power struggle phase where it was, I mean, do you see a lot of couples that once they have young kids and multiple kids, they're, I guess that, is that still the power struggle stage? Was that a whole different level of problems? Because I talked to a lot of divorced people that relationship was perfect until they had kids. The kids came in the picture and intimacy was gone. They felt like roommates and they decided to divorce rather than work through it. Is that still the
Yeah.
power struggle stage?
That's the power struggle. Absolutely, it's the power struggle. Kids just bring up challenges that they haven't had to face yet. And without the tools to be able to navigate those challenges, it goes badly. And because they don't understand what's going on, they don't understand they've never had to be responsible for other humans before. They've never had to collaborate as a team and sacrifice part of what they want for the greater good, because that's always what happens with kids. Kids come in the picture, goodbye, having the free life that you used to have before for the next 15 years. You're putting kids first. But here's the challenge. People end up putting kids first instead of putting their relationship first. The kids need to come second. Otherwise, the relationship falls apart and the kids don't have parents or parents that are together. It's commonly misunderstood that the kids should come first because the kids need us so much. But here's the thing. If the kids come first and our relationship comes second, our relationship suffers. The kids feel that. The two of us behind the scenes are fighting and we run the risk of us breaking up because we've put our relationship second. And now the kids have no parent unit and they end up growing up in two
Mhm.
homes. So step number one is figure out how to put your relationship first. And what that means is not ignoring your kids. It means that when there's something wrong in the relationship, when something comes up that needs to be dealt with, the kids' needs come second, the relationship needs come first. That might mean you say to the kids, guys, dinner's going to be an hour late tonight. Entertain yourselves. Mom and dad are going to go into the room next door. We've got some stuff we need to talk about. And you go resolve the stuff first, and then you can get back to meeting the kids' needs. Now, obviously, if your kid's got a broken leg and they're in an ambulance on the way to the hospital and the two of you have a fight, you're not going to leave the kid with a broken leg and deal with your fight. You know, you got to use common sense here. But generally, the relationship needs to come first. And that doesn't mean that you're putting in a ton of time into the relationship because the kids take up enough time already. Work takes up the rest of the time. It means that you're putting in enough time to keep the relationship afloat and your needs met. And when things come up, they're dealt with quickly. Repair happens quickly and a conflict is resolved quickly so that you can get back to doing what you need to do because kids take up a lot of time.
Right. I have always said the relationship cannot be a forgotten back burner part of the family life because what kind of family is it if the kids are seeing parents are disconnected and they're not having a good
Yeah.
role model of a, functional relationship. But then you
Yeah.
also see people that stay together just for the kids. And they do kind of live this side by side life that are very separate, but they're doing it for the kids. Is it at the kids' best interest to stay together but the parents have absolutely no love between them. They're not even trying to work
I,
on their problems.
yeah. So there's two ways to look at this. There are benefits to parents staying together even if there's no love. The kids have at least a family unit if they're able to collaborate and they have mom and dad available to them instead of strangers. However, the downside of that is the kids feel that there's no love and that makes them anxious and insecure about whether or not mom and dad are going to be okay and be able to protect them. And at some level, their nervous system is not calm and not relaxed. And so they grow up insecurely attached. And you're also modeling for the kids what love looks like, which is kind of loneliness and despair. So I am much more of a proponent of don't stay together just for the kids, because rather stay together for yourself, because you know that there's some work to be done, some growth to happen in repairing this relationship. And I don't think that every relationship is going to stay together. I don't think every relationship should stay together, but I'm a big proponent of at least give it 100% when you know what you're doing with the tools that I can give you to stay together. And if after that you still decide you want to leave, then you know you've given it your best shot. You know you've tried everything that can be tried, and now you can leave with open hearts going, you know what? We don't need to fight. We've resolved stuff. We can say goodbye to each other as friends and still be great co-parents to each other instead of leaving, in a fight and going, I hate that person. I can't stand my
Yeah.
ex. And then you're forced into co-parenting together. You don't come into the house to say hello to your ex when you pick up your kids in the weekend. The kids feel it, and that's what you model for them. And that's how their relationships grow up. And the research is very clear that kids from divorced families grow up and have a far higher likelihood of getting divorced themselves.
Wow. That is a scary statistic because how many marriages turn into divorce? So there,
Yeah,
I saw something else that if you are divorced once, you're more likely to get divorced a second time and then even more likely to divorce a third time. Is it
yeah.
because you see how easy it is to exit a relationship or that's an option for you to exit? So you're kind of always thinking that's an option rather than thinking, I committed to this person. I am going to do my very best to stay in this marriage and working through things. Do you think there's a something mental there?
I think the reason why the divorce rate gets higher, like, so 48% is the first marriage divorce rate. I think 63% is the second marriage divorce rate, and the third marriage divorce rate is 72%. I may be a percent or two off. It's been a while since I read the numbers, but I remember second is in the 60s and third is in the 70s. And I think the reason for this is if you get divorced and you don't heal, it's far more likely that your second marriage is also going to end and your third marriage is also going to end because nothing's changed inside you.
Mhm.
Whereas when you do the work, when conflict comes up, you're forced to grow and forced to heal and forced to look at yourself. And if you do that as a team, then even if you get divorced eventually, you're far more likely in your next relationship to know what's going on, be prepared for what's coming, and make it work. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is just the stats are all just completely skewed. They're not really accurate because if you think about it, the pool of data is everybody on first marriage divorces. On second marriage divorces, the pool of data is just everybody who already got divorced. So from that group of people, it's far more likely that they're going to get divorced. And if the next pool of data is everybody who's been divorced twice, it's even more likely that they're going to get divorced a third time. So it could just be a data thing being
Right.
skewed. Who knows?
I do speak to a lot of people that, in dating if they come from a broken household or divorced parents, I always ask, have you done any therapy? Have you done any self work? Because it's true, I want to make sure that that's not something they're still carrying. And they're not just kind of viewing as, relationships never work because my parents didn't work.
Yeah.
So for, people that come from that background, it's better for them to do kind of therapy on their own first before they even try to enter the marriage market, right?
I don't know. I don't really think so
Oh, really? Okay.
necessarily. I'm not against doing therapy, but here's the thing. Your issues don't come up until you're in relationship. And the issues that come up in relationship, you can't heal them by yourself. Why? Because they're relational issues. They need to be healed inside a relationship with another attachment figure. So think about this. If your wounds were caused in relationship with your parents are what are known as attachment figures, people you bond with and have the expectation that they will help you survive. At some level, your nervous system expects your parents, your attachment figures, to help you survive. When you grow up and you become an adult, you pair bond in the same way with your partner. It's an attachment bond. It comes with this unspoken expectation that you are going to help me survive. You're going to have my back. You're going to meet my needs. You're going to look out for me. You're going to stand up for me when I can't stand up for myself, when I'm sick. You're going to, dote on me and care for me. When I have a broken leg, you're going to help me up the stairs, that kind of thing. And those wounds that are formed with our parents, which are almost all of our childhood wounds, you can go to individual therapy and talk till you're blue in the face and nothing will touch sides.
Mm,
Nothing's going to change because those wounds don't get triggered in individual therapy. It's only in relationship with your partner that you can heal. And also, unless your therapist is incredibly skilled and becomes an attachment figure for you as well, it's very difficult for therapy to make a difference. Your partner, in fact, has the qualifications, if they learn how to do this, to become and turn into your greatest therapist. Because with them in partnership, they are your attachment figure. So at some level, your brain has your partner confused with your parents. And that is a good thing and a bad thing. The bad part of that is that they're going to trigger you to kingdom come. The good part of that is that if they're aware, they can also meet the needs that your parents never met for you, and your nervous system doesn't know that this isn't your parents. And at some level, they can heal the childhood wounds that you brought into the relationship. Well, ultimately, you do the healing, but they can
right.
help facilitate the healing. So, for example, let me bring this down and make this practical. Someone like me, I'm anxiously attached. I call anxiously attached people hailstorms. I call avoidantly attached people turtles. So if I use that kind of terminology, that's what I'm talking about. I also have three other types: chameleons, wolves, and sheep, but we might get to that later on. So I'm a hailstorm. I'm actually attached. I'm afraid of abandonment. That came from an abandonment wound with my parents. So if I get into a relationship and my partner understands this, and if unconsciously I am projecting my parents onto my partner, and I educate my partner and she understands what's going on, she can help me heal. How? By doing things like this. So she sees me triggered and she knows it's because she's been unresponsive. She can see my abandonment wound is coming up for me. She might say something like, babe, I'm not going anywhere. I am right here. You're not being abandoned. I love you. I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life. Now, let's sit down and have a conversation. Here, give me a hug. And she gives me a big hug. She reassures me. She holds my hand. And then suddenly my nervous system is like, you're not going to abandon me? Thank God. Okay. I can relax now. And after 6 months of this, my nervous system starts to trust that this person is safe. And functionally, we become a secure couple instead of an anxious, avoidant couple. And so that's how she heals or helps me heal my abandonment wound. Is this codependence? No, because
Mm,
ultimately I'm responsible for healing me. She just helps create the space in which healing is most likely to happen, the environment in which healing is most likely to happen, the safety. Healing doesn't happen when you don't feel safe. It only happens in a space of safety. And so these people are saying, no, you need to work on yourself first before you get into a relationship. That's just complete BS as far as I'm concerned. Can't work on the relational wounds outside of a relationship, which is why individual therapy, I think, fails to heal relational wounds. It can heal a whole bunch of other stuff really well, but you can
right.
talk until you're blue in the face about your relationship abandonment wounds to your therapist, and ain't nothing going to change for you.
Are you always going to be an anxious type attachment no matter who you meet, or can different partners bring out more of a secure attachment style in you or more anxious depending on I guess, the dynamics of the relationship?
I think you're always going to be anxious to some degree, or avoidant to some degree, or, fearful, avoidant, or disorganized, chameleon, wolf of sheep. You can learn to become more aware of what's happening inside of you when it's happening, and learn to control your immediate reactions so that you don't immediately do your automatic behavior like lash out and attack, or shut down and withdraw, or compulsively people please, or, put fuel in the fire and spark a fight. That part you can do. But at some level, I think we're all going to remain with parts of our wound. Just like, if you get like, I've got scars of all of my body that are kind of like, they're almost like a history book of the motorcycle crashes I've had over the years since I was a teenager. I'm passionate about riding dirt bikes. I've had so many accidents, broken so many bones over the years. The scars are always going to be there. So at some level, I'm always going to be anxiously attached. But with my partner and we can function as a secure team together because the two of us have learned how each other works, and together we create a secure functioning. This is a term that comes from Dr. Stan Tatkin, a secure functioning relationship, even if individually we still have scars from our attachment wound. But those scars aren't open wounds anymore, gushing blood. Like, we're no longer paralyzed by our fear of abandonment. We're like, okay, I know what's happening. I can talk myself off this cliff. Okay, she didn't respond to my text message. It's been 4 hours. She's not abandoning me. She's not sleeping with some other guy. Like, I know that's not what's happening. Like, I can calm myself down, get on with my life, and regulate myself. And then I also, over time, learned to trust that, okay, we've been together like 14 years now, and she hasn't left. Like, I would be a fool to think she's going to suddenly leave me now. That doesn't make me
Right.
complacent. It makes me feel safe. And so our relationship now is secure, even though both my wife and I have historically been incredibly insecure about relationships and not very good at relationships either back in the day. We've had to learn that, and it's been hard-earned success. We put the work in, the time in, and earned the right to have the generally happy relationship that we have now. I say
Mm.
generally happy because I don't think it's realistic to strive to have, a happy relationship all the time, because then you're just avoiding talking about the stuff that comes up. And the couples who say we're happy all the time, we never fight, I'm like, oh, you guys are in trouble. Just wait.
Right. For me, when I was dating, I always attracted very avoidant people. And I wasn't very anxious, but I was always a little anxious. I blame it because my sister left, she was 10 years older. She left to go to college when I was 10 years old. So I have abandonment issues from her, not
Yep.
from my
Another
parents.
attachment figure, your sister. There
But
you go.
but yeah, but it was hurtful. She was, I was an only child after she left. I felt very lonely. But when
Believe
I
it.
met my husband and he was so consistent and showed up every day, it felt very off to me. I really was thinking like something's wrong with him. Why is he so nice to me? There must be something wrong with him if he likes me so much. I really had to talk myself off the cliff because I almost ruined my could it be marriage by letting that anxiety and that anxious attachment that I had with past partners. And it's funny, like, why do we seek the same kind of dynamics in these toxic relationships? It's just like the devil, like we can't help but seek out what feels familiar, even though we know it's not healthy for us. It really took me a lot of time and reading a lot of dating books and listening to dating coaches and going on my own path of understanding relationships and dating to be
Yeah.
able to get myself on the right path. But why do we attract these awful dynamics again and again?
Okay. Because it's familiar.
Hmm.
So think about it this way. I love to approach our behavior from the perspective of survival. We've all got a nervous system. Its primary and sole function is to help us survive. If your first experience of love, which is bonding with your parents, doesn't go well, or doesn't go as well as it should, at some point in your 16 years of life, you had some kind of loss, trauma, neglect, whatever the case may be, it doesn't go well. That's what you begin to associate with being love. So, for example, my mom was inconsistent. She is avoidantly attached, fearful avoidant. I call that the chameleon type, people pleasing. She had a job. She had a struggling relationship with my dad. She couldn't be there all the time. She was uncomfortable talking about her own feelings, let alone my feelings. So often when I needed her, all I got from her was distance. Like, she was comfortable meeting my basic needs for food and shelter and took me to school and was reliable and predictable in those ways. But when it came to my emotions, she wasn't. And I had the experience of being abandoned by mom. So that was my very first experience of love, because mom was my first attachment figure. So I learn, and what gets wired into my brain is love equals abandonment. Now, I consciously know that that's not true, but my nervous system doesn't. So every time I meet somebody else that at some level is unavailable, my nervous system goes, bing, 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 bing. There's somebody you could love. And I get into a relationship with them, and I feel the same anxiety I felt at some level with my mom. I couldn't have named it at the time because I was too young. But with this new person, I feel it again. And I'm like, I'm in love. And what has been wired in my brain, I've got crossed wires, that anxiety equals love. So every time I'm with someone that makes me feel anxious, my nervous system starts going like this: I'm in love. This is the one. And every time I meet somebody who makes me feel calm, I'm like,
Right.
next, you know? And so that's how I kept attracting the same person. We attract people that feel familiar. And Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt, they're the most amazing couples therapists. They wrote some of the most popular books on couples therapy, my favorite being Getting the Love You Want. They talk about how the sum total of our experience of love with mom and dad is what we seek out in another, but unconsciously. We won't often see it in the beginning. They'll be predictable, like you spoke about with your husband, predictable, reliable, constant in the beginning, until you hit the power struggle stage. And then suddenly they turn into your parents and you turn into theirs.
I have to say, every day I find more ways that my husband and my dad are the same person. But honestly, I'm very lucky. I have a great relationship with my father, and he was a great husband, father. I love him dearly. But it is funny because even all the quirks, all the little things that they do, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I literally married my dad. And as I gotten to know my husband's mother better and better, I realized he kind of like we're kind of similar. We have some similar energy, even like the way we speak and how we do baby talk to him. Like we're just kind of similar dynamics. And it's funny that we, obviously subconsciously did this, that we found each other's, and he has a great relationship with his mother. So is that something that you see, like if you have a good relationship with, your father or mother, and you seek that in a partner, that could be a really good match?
Generally, I think your relationship with your parents is a good measuring stick for how secure you are. If you have a fantastic relationship with your parents and you guys can get along and talk about anything, and you can go to them and lean on them when you need support, they come to you, the two of you are really close, or the three of you are really close, you're probably going to do well in relationships. And one of the things I often recommend that couples do is support their partner in restoring their relationship with their parents. So let's say, hypothetically, you and I are married. My job would be supporting you restoring your relationship or improving your relationship with your parents. Because what I've noticed is that people who struggle the most in relationships generally don't have a great relationship with their parents as well. And when you heal that primary attachment relationship with your parents, very often your relationship with your partner improves massively.
Hmm. I honestly do think that since I've been with my husband, my relationship with my parents has only gotten better. Primarily because I don't stay with them anymore when I go visit because we'll get our own place. But but it has one, and he's so good about including them in plans, and he'll call my mom randomly, and he has a good relationship with
Beautiful.
them, and it has made my relationship with them feel a lot lighter and happier and a lot less arguments. And I've always said that the person that you pick, all the relationships around you should get better, like with friendships, even with work situations, with your, family, that they should elevate you in a way where everything kind of in life does get better. Because I've definitely dated people in the past where friendships suffered, and really, like my parents didn't like who I dated, so I think that is a good sign that you're on the right path of being with someone who's good for you.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. I feel like you've kind of healed some of my wounds just in this chat.
Well, great.
Thank you for the free therapy. But yeah, thank you. Seriously, you have so much wisdom to share and you're so passionate about it that I'm like, I'm going to go back to your Instagram and rewatch all your videos. But tell us
Thank you.
where people can find you and get more of your information. And I'll make sure to link
Sure.
everything in the show notes.
Oh, that's awesome. So if your people want to learn more, if you're watching this and you want to improve your relationship, head over to loveatfirstfight.com. Fight with an F, not sight, but fight. And I have a free course there called Love Unlocked. And in that course, I'm going to teach you through 5 little 10-minute videos the basics of how to get through your power struggle stage, including give you a free attachment quiz so you'll find out whether or not you're a hailstorm, a turtle, a chameleon, a wolf, or a sheep, and what to do about that in your relationship. It's all for free at loveatfirstfight.com.
I'm literally going to download it right now. But thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate you. It was so much
It's a
fun.
pleasure, Anna. Thank you for having me here. I've enjoyed meeting you, and hopefully we connect again.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.